Hey everybody, welcome into this week's episode of the Spot On Fishing Top 5. I'm your host, Tony Krizek, and man, it's great to be back out working again, filming, fishing, and today we're going to talk about those inland trout. Now you may be thinking, Tone, we're almost a month out from when that season opened, but have no fear, there are still trout to be caught. But we want to show you the top 5 things, the top 5 baits that you should be throwing for these inland trout in this weird spring pattern weather-wise we're having. The first thing we're going to talk about is actually running live bait. And that's basically just under a slip bobber. You know, we have our bobber stop, then a little bead, and then we can slide that slip bobber on. Then we actually tie our hook on, and we'll put a split shot, maybe, a foot or so, maybe even a little more above that hook, because we want it to be somewhat natural. Now, if we're going to run like a night crawler, I would use a bait holder hook. It has those 2 barbs on it, and that's my preferred method of live bait for the trout. But you can also run minnows. That's a good option too. Now, if you're running minnows, you can get by with just running like an Aberdeen hook or a smaller octopus hook. That bobber system really does well though when we have a good breeze. You know, we want to be able to actually drift that bobber. And if you can kind of get a cross breeze, you don't want that bait flying, but if you can get it to actually just kind of drift from left to right or right to left in front of you and work a weed edge or a break line with it, that is golden. Now we're only setting them about 3 to 4 feet down at the most. Trout feed upwards, kind of like the crappies. They'll feed in an upward setting a lot of times, those active fish. So that is a good one to start out with under these type of conditions. The next thing we're going to talk about is actually from Rebel, and it's the Rebel Minnow. Now there's one downside to this bait, and that is it is very lightweight. The good news on this bait is it has a split ring on the nose, so we can actually tie direct to that split ring. We don't want to use a snap swivel, we want to tie direct. Now even adding a small split shot can have a tendency to sink that bait. But with the weird weather, we're not actually having a lot of weed growth that has been emergent yet, so it's not a bad idea to even put a little split shot just to increase your casting distance. You're not going to have to worry about hanging up probably until we get into the first part of May, you know, even the 2nd, 3rd weekend when the weed growth, especially out here at Blackwell, we're on Silver Lake right now filming this, and the weed growth is just not super high yet by any means. So cold this water, it's so deep and clear. But a straight retrieve works very well with that, stop and go. Also, the bait will float back up if you're not using a weight. So if you need to back it out of trouble, you'll be able to do so. But it is a cool little bait, especially good if you guys have a little John boat or smaller fishing boat that you want to take out here. It's electric motor only on Blackwell, but any of the other forest preserve lakes that allow it, that have the trout, be a good one to troll with as well. Up next is one of my favorite crankbaits for the trout, and that is from Rapala. It's the jointed Rapala Minnow. Now a J7, a J9, you know, is nothing bigger than that. We're keeping it fairly small. And again, that jointed action that it has, it creates a lot more flash, a lot more vibration. And when those fish are a little more finicky, you'd be surprised how much that can actually trigger a few extra bites for you. And when it's a shallow diving crankbait, you know, maybe gets down about 2 feet. Maybe if you get a real long cast out of it, you might get 3. But it's very good. It stays right above the weeds for you. And it has enough weight that it's easier to cast too. Also, you guys, if you're in the boat out here, you control it too. But one big thing to remember with, they don't come with a split ring on the front. Now you can do one of 2 things. You can either buy a package of very small split rings, or you can attach a little snap. Not a snap swivel, but just a little cross-lock snap up in front. And that's going to help increase your action tremendously and give it a lot wider a wobble. Up next on our list right now is one of the baits that's really been about the hottest around as far as a moving bait so far this season for the trout, and that's an inline spinner. And one that's been really doing well versus many of the others is from Blue Fox. And it's a heavier weight inline spinner. The weight is actually up on the front of that shaft, and it's designed to work a little bit deeper than a standard inline spinner. It has a willow leaf blade to it, so it's not a tremendous amount of vibration and lift. It's more flash. Yellow has been a great color. Gold has been a good color. We've even seen some action on a lighter pattern, you know, more when the sun's out, go into like a blue pearlescent type pattern. Now what's nice is it will still have some lift to it, not as much as a Colorado blade or an Indiana blade or a French blade, but the faster you do retrieve a spinner, the higher up in the water column it's going to run. And we can actually slow roll it almost near the bottom. And that's been the ticket, especially in this real cold water. And it's not uncommon. Throw it out, let it sit for a few seconds before we start our retrieve. Let it start to work its way down a little bit, and then just a slow retrieve. Now play around, because any given day it can change. We could be in a quicker pattern, we could have drastic warm up in water temperatures, and those fish are going to be up moving around a little more. So every day will be different going forward, but early on like this, a nice slow retrieve working that inline spinner near the bottom can be a dynamite ticket. Now what a contrast of differences between our fall pattern here. When we filmed our fall top 5 inland trout, you noticed that what I'm going to list as number 1 was actually sitting at number 5 in the fall. And it's wild how just, you know, you would think it's not too much different in the spring, but so far this spring it truly has been. And that's the Berkley Powerbait. Now I love running it in that pink color. There's just something about the pink color that really gets the trout going. It comes in such a variety of colors. I mean, there's rainbow and sherbet and blue and yellow and chartreuse and orange and mixtures of everything. But that straight pink has always been real hot for us. And the system, the rig we're running it on, is actually a modified Carolina rig for you bass guys out there. Much smaller scale, of course. 1/8 ounce bullet weight tungsten. I prefer tungsten over the lead, just for the simple fact that the tungsten is less bulky. You don't have to worry about it getting hung up as easily in the emergent vegetation that's coming up. But you have your weight, you put a little bead just to protect the knot, kind of a shock absorber, tie on that swivel, and then your leader line. The leader line could be anywhere from about 10 inches to 18 inches. And again, you'll have to play around with that and see what they want. But we've had so many fronts, and that water's so cold, and we've had rain, we've had snow. They haven't really been up and cruising very heavily. So it's not a bad idea, especially if you have access to a brake line or a deeper weed edge, to run this rig, because the power bait will float up. It's not going to sit on the bottom, only your weight is. And when you throw it out there, you're going to want to have a little bit of a bow in your line, give it a little slack, so that when that fish grabs it, he'll never feel the weight. He'll just actually run back with it. And when they're real finicky like this, it's just a dynamite pattern to do. So it is a little different this year. You know, normally we're at the mid part, almost towards the end of April, and normally we're wrapping up any inland trout adventures. But just with all this weather, man, it's still going. There's still a lot of fish to be had. So if you haven't had a chance to get out yet, now that the weather's starting to stabilize, come on out to the Forest Preserve Lakes, come on out to Blackwell here in DuPage County, Silver Lake. There's still trout to be had. They're not all giants. They definitely stocked a little bit of smaller fish this year. The fish we've caught have been on the small side, maybe 10 inches, and that's the reports we've gotten from a lot of fellow viewers. So hey, let us know in the comments. What's been your hot spring bait for the trout this year? We want to know what you're throwing. Let your voice be heard. Send us a comment. Be sure and like the video. And of course, share it with all your fishing friends and introduce them to Spot On Fishing. And you can also find all the products we're talking about here through our Amazon links. And it's a way you can purchase the products that we throw, that we firmly believe in, and help support Spot On Fishing to continue to bring you this great programming. That's about it for right now, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Tony Krizek. We'll see you again on Tony's Spot On Fishing.